The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Techtown Detroit, Detroit's entrepreneurship hub. Techtown Detroit is a business incubator and accelerator, helping tech startups and local businesses launch and grow. Techtown supports businesses with co-working, office, meeting, and event space. They also connect entrepreneurs to resources and learning and networking events in Detroit. Techtown Detroit, Detroit's entrepreneurship hub. Hey everybody, welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm Craig Foley. Thank you very much for being with us on this Friday. And as usual, my regular guests, Nancy Derringer and Alan Lengel from Deadline Detroit are here. Thank you both very much. And our special guest today hardly needs an introduction. A man so iconic in Detroit that we recognized the back of his head in one of his competitors' commercials the other day during the Super Bowl. Geoff Fieger is with us.
But the reason I want it recognizable in more cities than Detroit.
Very true. Understood. But anyway, that was something that I was watching the other day, and I was like, wow, there's a shot across the bow. But you've got a lot. Everybody's talking about the back of your head as opposed to the commercial itself.
Said, you're the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I said, why? He said, because Mike Moore has just paid $90,000 to get you publicity. That's really brilliant. And I think he ran it twice. That's even brighter.
Yeah,
I
I did run twice.
And everybody was talking about the back of my head. So that's what you want to do. If you're a really bright,
right?
If you're a really bright guy, what you want to do is pay $90,000 for an ad to promote yourself that really promotes your competitor. Right?
So Geoff wins.
That's
Go
right.
for the win. There you go. All right. Well,
He's a goofy guy. I think he has a podcast, too, I heard, with, what's his name, the guy from Kevin Dietz, I heard.
Yes.
What does pod mean? What's a podcast?
Well, they used to start out for iPods. That's what it was. So
iPods.
The downloadable radio shows, basically.
You can see, I know, I have one of the most advanced pieces of
That's an attorney
equipment.
thing, I think.
I don't think it's an attorney thing. I walked into a store the other day. A young girl said, "What's that?"
Really?
It's your Star Trek communicator.
She thought it was so advanced it hadn't even been known to her.
These days, it's like declining to try heroin the first time by hanging on to that thing. So hang on to it.
That's
Don't
right.
drop it.
That's right.
Give me that analogy again. It's like declining.
It's like declining to try heroin if you
Staying
hang
off
on
the
to
smartphones.
Yeah,
Really?
exactly,
Yeah, that's right, because
it's
they do
like,
change everything.
Why, you mean everybody tries heroin except the people who don't?
No, but those of us who...
Okay.
All right.
All right. So I was trying to think of a good title for this week's episode, and it's like Donald Unchained, I think, is where we are. Of course, he was acquitted. He was acquitted in the Senate, as we knew was going to happen. That was not a surprise.
Was it Django Unchained?
Django Unchained. That's kind of what I'm doing here. But Donald Trump comes out yesterday at the National Prayer Breakfast, has a diss for Mitt Romney and Nancy Pelosi, questioning their faith at the faith breakfast.
Right.
Really nice and classy move right there.
Yeah.
And then gives a rambling 1-hour address in which he became the first ever sitting president to swear while in an official capacity.
In the East Room.
In the East Room, yes.
At the National Prayer Breakfast. I mean, did you see what he went after Bloomberg?
Yes.
Bloomberg calls himself Blumberg, by the way.
Yes.
He does.
Yeah, I mean, on the commercial, I wonder why they say Bloomberg, but he calls
Double
himself
O's.
Blumberg, but he was making fun that Bloomberg is short and was standing on a box, and Bloomberg writes this tweet, and he says, "Well, what about the fact that you're an obese, with phony hair and you're painted orange?" And that's what it needs. And he actually, wrote that, and I read it on the screen of CNN. The other wimpy Democrats won't do that.
Right.
And I don't know if he's wimpy or not, but that's what they need to do, because the guy is a clown, and he's really a coward. And when they say he's a bully, bullies are generally cowards. And so if you really go after them, and I understand that he really truly is a phony. This is all a phony act that he learned in 14 years as this guy on The Apprentice, this impression that everybody has, because he's an utter incompetent. I mean, look at he has more criminals who have left the administration than any president ever. I mean, you can talk about some of the guys, from the Teapot Dome affair, but this guy is truly incompetent, truly unable to run anything. look at the deficit that we have. Republicans traditionally always talked about the deficit.
Right.
And he's touting, his only accomplishment is he's touting an economy that is certainly the result of Obama on an upward trajectory. Nothing particular that he's done, and the growth factor that we are engaged in right now is only at 2.3%, which is less than what Carter had when he lost in 1979. So if anybody pays attention, the problem is the news media doesn't pay attention anymore. Basically don't. For instance, when I ran for governor of Michigan, I used to give press conferences in the Lansing Press Corps. They had 50, 75 people at the Lansing Press Corps. If you do it now, maybe they have 2 or 3. Literally, I'm not joking with you. They have 2 or 3 members of the Lansing Press Corps. So in Michigan, there's basically no coverage of anything. And they're doing the same thing in the national.
You brought up your campaign,
but to a less extent.
You brought up your campaign. You were vilified in the media for saying some of the things you said during that gubernatorial campaign. And compare that to what we're hearing out of this president.
Literally nothing. What hypocrites! I said nothing. I made a joke once about John Engler because he was standing in front of a barn, and he had triplets or whatever.
Yes.
And I made a joke about whether he was the father or because
looking for the pigtails.
Pigtails. And I mean, they were aghast that I could say anything like that. And basically, I said it in the context of a radio show. I used to do this Fieger time chat with Jim. What was Jim's on WCSX? What Jim?
Jim Johnson.
Jim Johnson. So we used to do that every Thursday morning. And I was excoriated for that. What Trump does, I look like a amateur compared to Trump's vileness.
It was a
He's
different
vile.
time, though.
He's vile.
He is.
But
He's awful.
no. Here, you want me to really tell
time.
you? The problem is that there is no Democrat. Look at the Democrats, and I'm serious. Not that I don't like Buttigieg. I like Sanders. I like them. There's nothing I dislike about any of them, but they're not inspiring. Now, he's not inspiring either because he's a fool. But between the two, he projects an image of power. He struts his chin out. He looks
like Mussolini when he's
phony.
out there.
He really
looks
does,
like
and he
Mussolini.
needs to be hung upside down by his feet in the square. No, I'm not kidding you, but nobody stands up to him.
Right.
Certainly not in his own party.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not just in his own party. There's utter and complete sycophants how they look at themselves
Nancy
in the
Pelosi
mirror.
does stand up to him.
Mitt Romney grew up across the street from me.
Uh-huh.
I live in Bloomfield Hills. His dad died in that house right across the street from me.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to give him a lot of credit for standing up there and doing what he did. Not because there really is any risk in it. I think he'll be incredibly more well-known and well-thought of than he would have been otherwise. These utter and complete cowards, after they're dead, nobody will even bother pissing on their grave. I'm not kidding you.
No, you're
I know.
absolutely right.
They're
I
just
think you're
horrible.
right.
But the problem is that I don't see any of the crop of Democrats in there willing to stand up to this orange clown with phony hair who's obese, just like Mike Bloomberg says, and just say what it is.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at Bloomberg for just a second, because there's a column in the Washington Post today saying that the real winner of Iowa appears to be Mike Bloomberg. Because
Of course, but this is so silly too. First of all, this
He didn't even run. Spent no money.
No, yeah, exactly. But that's the idea that it looks so bad because we're now Friday and the results in the Iowa primary were Tuesday and they took a long time to get it. That's utter and complete nonsense. The news media wants the political campaign to be like a football game. They want it to be a sporting event.
Horse race is the metaphor, right?
Well, they want any sporting event. They portray it like a sporting event, and they want the results. So they had all this money invested. They have all their anchors. They're waiting for the results, and they didn't come.
Yeah.
So these guys are twiddling their fingers. They're angry. I promise you, in a month, nobody will remember anything that happened in Iowa. And who cares anyways? They come out of there with 2 or 3 delegates.
Yeah.
It means nothing to anybody. Anybody. The Buttigieg won, nobody will remember. And nobody can tell you who won last time, or the last time before that, or the time before that. It means nothing. Absolutely nothing. But they don't have a good crop of Democratic candidates. That's their problem.
No.
Who do you like out of all of them?
Well, the only
I
I like Buttigieg, but he I can't get out of my head what Trump said, that he looked like Alfred E. Newman. He does. He does.
What were we
What,
talking
worry?
about a couple weeks ago? Didn't Rick Santorum win the Iowa caucus?
He may have, yes.
I think
What,
he did.
yeah. Now, who remembers
Yeah,
Rick's?
who remembers-
Most of
Huckabee
your
won. Yeah, Mike
listeners don't
Huckabee.
even know who Rick Santorum is. I'll tell you a funny story about Mike Huckabee. I walked into. I was in. This was while he was running for president. And he probably had won one of the primaries or stuff. And he knew me because I was on Fox a lot. And I walk into the private terminal at Teterboro, where I fly into, where John F. Kennedy Jr. took off from and never returned. And I walk in, and Mike Huckabee is standing there without any pants on. He's changing his clothes because he's on the campaign trail, and he didn't have any aides or anything, and he had, I think, won 1 or 2 primaries. He goes, "Hi, Jeff," and I go, "Hey." Literally had no pants on. He's standing there. I said, "Hey, nice meeting you."
Well, see, this is why you need a smartphone, so you got to capture that moment for all of us to
I
see.
don't care about a goddamn smartphone. Spend your life taking pictures of yourself or other people. Who cares about that? I mean, seriously,
I'm
can
getting
you imagine?
rid of mine as soon as we
That's
go
right.
off.
Throw
the
it.
air.
Can you
Smash it.
imagine
He's shaming-
the
he's
amount
shaming
of
us.
time- But nobody talks about also the amount of people being run over because of those things, because their face is stuck in their phone and they're not looking at what they're going. They're walking off bridges. They're being run over by cars. I'll bet you the incidence and increase of accidents as a result of that and people being hurt or killed
no
is
question.
astronomical.
Well,
Oh,
texting
definitely.
is-
They said-
Distracted driving for sure is a huge issue
And I'll
too. I
bet
mean,
you there's a new field of medicine going to occur as a result of necks being bent over like
Well, they're
that.
already suggesting that there are some evolutionary changes taking place. Little
doesn't
spurs in
happen
the neck.
that fast.
Oh, I know, but they're seeing in young people
Yeah.
little spurs building in the neck. because
However,
they're doing
I
that
do
all the time.
believe, though, that evolutionary changes occur not necessarily in visible ways. They always think they're going to have 6 digits or a vestigial tail or something. I think it's happening in the brain, and that explains, because I
Yes.
can never explain why Trump can do what he's doing and nevertheless maintain the support he's maintained, unless the mean intelligence of this country has dramatically decreased, which I believe it has. So you'll see evolution. I think evolutionary changes occur imperceptibly and also in the mind, and therefore, and I think that the populace in general, because when I was born there was 100 and some million people in 1950. There are now over 350 million people just in this country. I think the mean intelligence of this country has gone down.
It's entirely possible.
I think there used to be, in terms of percentage-wise, more smart people.
Certainly the attention span.
Present
I've had
company
to
excluded,
start like making myself read a book at bedtime instead of scrolling Twitter and seeing what the latest outrage is out of Washington.
Right.
And I try to do like 10 pages, and I feel like I'm a fourth grader, who has to read 10 pages before for their reading diary. It's insane. It's
I don't
definitely
read
I have a
enough
quick
anymore.
question for Jeff.
Go ahead.
Your commercials all the time. I mean, you have issues on that, and at the end you also
I do.
say Fieger 2020.
Yeah.
What
Because I thought of running, and then it's so disappointing. I would have run as a favorite son here in Michigan if they still had those things, and play with the. But you really can't even do that. Play with the nomination. But it's so discouraging. It's literally. I mean, look what's gone on. I mean, I'm not impressed or inspired by any of the present candidates. And I know we have to get rid of the orange clown. But there must be somebody in this country, a Democrat, that somehow inspires people beyond the crop that stood up and said they want to do it. You know what's really sad? Biden, something's wrong. You mark my words on this. Something is not physically right with him because he looks frail. I don't care about the hands on people. I don't care about that at all. I'm just speaking about him in terms of his frailty. He looks like a shadow of the guy who just a few years ago was the vice president.
Right.
He looks frail. He looks like something physically is going on.
And I think that's also factoring, though, into the way people are not supporting him at the moment. I mean,
Absolutely.
you've got the double whammy of
he
the Trump
does not
coverage,
look
plus,
hardy.
Right.
I mean, ageism is a real issue.
I don't care about age. I mean, Blumberg's a lot older than Biden, and Trump isn't that much younger than Biden. Biden looks dramatically frail, like he's not the same guy. He looks frail.
Isn't
and
there
that's
always
what's
a
going
tipping
on.
point, though, in the aging process? Because I've noticed this with people that I
Sometimes.
see, like, once a year or so, and it'll
I'm
be
hoping
like,
not, though.
well, I know, but I mean, but you see, you look, and it's like they're doing great, and it's like you're thinking, wow, what a vigorous person in their 60s or 70s, and then the next time you see him, it's kind of like, okay, old age has arrived.
I see that. My father passed away. It'll be 3 years in this month. He was 97. He was driving till 91. I think at that age, you definitely see like a year,
Wow.
From 93 to 94, you can see a little difference. From 94 to,
Right.
if you haven't seen him in 2 years, 96.
Well, that's because if you don't see a person, but if you see them constantly, then those changes often are imperceptible. But not with Biden. You see him constantly,
Right.
but he looks dramatically different. I mean,
know.
guess what? We're aging. All you're saying is we're aging.
He's slow. I mean, during the debates, he's off. There's like
looks
it's like your
frail.
computer
He
downloading
looks
something.
frail.
It's
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
a little
He
longer.
looks
I get it.
frail.
Yeah.
All right, so
Well,
let's move on.
let's move on
Move
because
on to what?
there's a story.
You
there's
know
a
who
story
you're
out
talking.
today.
You're talking to the guy who represented Kevorkian.
Yeah, well,
You're talking about people getting old and dying. Come on. You must have forgot who you're talking to.
well, talk about this for just a second. Story in the Washington Post today. They finally got they got their hands on some bills from Mar-a-Lago and some other Trump properties.
I saw that.
$650 a night. The Secret Service is paying for the rooms at Mar-a-Lago.
No, the Circuit you're paying for it.
Well, of
the
course.
American people are paying Donald Trump and his sons.
They rented a place for $17,000 a
to
month
live at
Mar-a-Lago.
Donald Trump's house. And Donald Trump is, I'm sure, charging the American taxpayers for himself to stay at his own goddamn place.
Yes.
At Mar-a-Lago. And have you been down there?
I have not.
I go down there a lot because I have a lot of cases in Palm Beach. He got Mar-a-Lago for a song and a dance. It is the single, probably, Palm Beach is an island,
Yeah.
and it's across from West Palm, which is real America. Palm Beach is by and large, these people, if you want to really see people who are artificially alive, but nevertheless kept alive. You should see these white Republicans down there. How you go to the restaurants, they're down there, and it's amazing that
The
they're
white
alive.
shoes and white belts.
And
No,
and
he's
the women,
right. The
and
women
the women
look-
they're much more women than men because the men they've outlived their husbands and they've got the money. So the husbands, whichever are there, can barely move. But getting back to my point, Mar-a-Lago is at the very end of the island. It's probably the most not unattractive because it's pretty, but it's probably the least desirable
Yes.
lot because right after that is the causeway and the freeway. And I swear to God, because I was staying there, I had to go wash my clothes. There's a laundromat right across on the other bridge. I mean, seriously, with derelicts hanging out at the laundromat. So the reason he got it for a song and a dance in the early 80s, is because that piece of property was totally undesirable.
Well,
now, he did
Would
maintain
you pay
it, though.
$650 a night to stay there?
Well, nowadays, he's made this nice, and just to be in close proximity with him, I wouldn't pay $650 to stay anywhere near him. But that place I would go to, I tried to get in there recently, a couple of weeks ago, just to say that I went there for lunch, but they wouldn't let me in. I wonder why.
Well, didn't they say that he turned that into a club because they wouldn't let him in the Bath and Tennis Club, which is the really prestigious, or the not prestigious, but it's the old money.
There's
That's
a lot.
the blue blood
Right,
club.
but that's true with everything Trump has done. They never really let him into New York society.
No.
And they never really let him into Palm Beach society.
Right,
Okay?
he's a Bulgarian, so he starts his own
He's not
club.
just a Vulgarian, but he's a wannabe. And
Right.
so he desperately wants to be accepted. In fact, people
the Great
privately
Gatsby.
say that when you know him privately, apparently he wants to please everybody. The whole thing he does out front and big time bully, it's all an act to look powerful. Behind the scenes, he doesn't like confronting people. He doesn't fire people. He doesn't do anything. He's really kind of a coward. Primarily also because he really doesn't know what he's doing. He's unsure of himself. He doesn't read. The best thing, if you ever want to read anything good, very short, Tony Schwartz, who wrote the Art of the Deal, really wrote it because said Trump has never read a book in his whole life. He's absolutely incompetent. And who was his? Michael Cohn, his fixer lawyer who went to law school here in Michigan, said he won't let go. He won't let go either of that
Right.
power. He
Of course
won't.
he
If
won't.
anybody thinks he's letting go,
Well, this
he's
goes
not
back to
letting
your
go.
point at the beginning of this rambling, whatever we're doing here.
I don't think we're rambling.
No, we are. We're having a conversation.
I
This is what this
honestly,
is about.
I wish I heard this discussion instead of the inane discussion, because all I watch is MSNBC and CNN, and then I turn on Fox to make sure they're not trying to get guns. I used to watch Jim Baker, the religious
Oh, yeah.
nuts. Before there was Fox, there was Jim Baker and all those religious nuts, and you had to keep an eye on them to
Robertson.
see if they were asking for guns. Okay, I wanted to make sure. And you got to keep an eye out for Fox, because they may be soliciting for guns too. And all I watch, but they have inane. Every 15 minutes is the same thing, and they say inanity. Inanity.
Yeah, no, you're right. But going back to what you said before and tying this together, you're absolutely right, and I think I've felt the same way because like you're right. Bullies are all cowards. People who people frequently have this kind of dark side. Why don't more Democrats? If it's obvious to you and me, why don't more Democrats go for that?
I'll
and I
tell
think
you why.
Nancy
Want me to-
Pelosi
yeah,
kind of
she
when she
does.
said he'll always be impeached.
No,
I think that was like a shiv right.
I
in the ribs.
understand, but primarily you have to understand who goes into public office, and they're not the best and the brightest, and they're not the most brave,
The rapists.
and they're not, and they're not inspirational. It's the best job they ever had, and they're looking to get out and get rich when they get out, and therefore you're left with this class of people, as you see with the Republican senators. I mean, where you put them all in a box and drop them in the ocean and nobody would miss any of them. You couldn't even remember who they are. Do you know one of them is named Crapo?
Yeah.
They call him Crapo, but his name is
Mike Crapo. Yes.
Now, how you got? I'll tell you how he got elected. Right here in Detroit, because nobody knew who it was. She put her name on the ballot for the clerk of Macomb County, controlling all their money. I don't even remember. She was
Karen Spranger.
She was
Oh,
a
my God.
homeless lady
Yes.
who was living in a house in Warren that wasn't really hers. I
Yeah.
think she was squatting.
squatting.
But because she put her name as a Republican and nobody knew her, they weren't voting for her. They were voting for the word Republican. They elected a homeless, mentally ill person to be the clerk of Macomb County. And even the
That's an important
Republicans said,
job.
"Oh my God, we've got a homeless, insane person," and they got rid of her. But that's how these people get elected. Okay, the electorate primarily votes for that word. They don't vote. They know nothing about the people. Hitler, if he changes his name, could be elected as a Republican in any Republican district. You think I'm joking? He could. Just change your name and get rid of that mustache. You get elected. You think I'm joking?
No,
but
I
I'm
don't.
not.
We're laughing
That's
at it.
really sad.
I think you're right.
Well, okay. Let's talk then about elected officials because
Why? I've been talking about it.
let's go to Michigan though. Governor Whitmer the other day
Now,
just said
nobody knows. I ran for governor of the state of Michigan. I was nominated.
I remember.
She won. She ran at an opportune time, which is the fact that we had 8 years of Rick Snyder. Now, who the hell is Rick Snyder? The
tough
nerd, the tough nerd, right, who poisoned Flint, who now can't walk down the street and somebody will, Deep Six hymn. And now who's Gretchen Whitmer? I don't know who Gretchen. I'm pretty I'm more knowledgeable than about 99.9% of people in the state of Michigan in terms of state government, and I don't know who Gretchen Whitmer is. I know her father ran Blue Cross and Blue Shield. I know that's where the money came from, and I know she was in the legislature, and I know somebody said, well, we'll get a woman because people will vote for a woman, which is true, and so we have Gretchen Whitmer. Now, she's not bad. She's not a dumb person.
She seems pretty sharp.
She's. I like her coat. I like the way she wears her leathers.
That
and
leather
stuff
coat.
like that.
You're like a biker.
But I mean, other than that, though, I mean, what did Gretchen Whitmer do, or has done, or anything? I'll tell you this: she's not super tactical in terms of her. She allowed the Republicans to get her to eviscerate no fault without any deal for the roads. Now, how stupid would that be? You do not eviscerate no fault unless you've got a deal in place for the roads, if that's what you're going to do. And they just said, screw you. We just got you to get rid of no fault, and God help us all when that kicks in July. God help the people of the state of Michigan.
Interesting question, though, because there's a lot of discussion about whether or not Michigan's insurance system should match up what's going on in the rest of the country. I don't practice law around the country.
Do.
What happens in these
do.
other states with lower limits?
What lower limits?
In terms of how much medical benefits you get after an accident.
The state pays for them. Ends up paying for them if you don't have medical coverage. The state ends up paying for them instead of the insurance company. Who do you think was behind, quote unquote, no fault? Whenever you hear the word reform, it doesn't mean it's making it better. It means somebody's making a lot of money. Whenever you hear the word reform in politics, it means that some special interest is getting what they paid for. And in this case, the insurance company said, we don't want to pay so much anymore for the people of the state of Michigan, so we want to turn it over to the people of the state of Michigan. So if you're catastrophic, and the only reason this hadn't happened before was a Republican, Brooks Patterson, who was critically injured in a car accident, ran up millions and millions of dollars in medical care and suddenly realized if he hadn't had that, he would be in the poorhouse. Yeah. And he would be literally thrown to the wolves. And so he wouldn't let the Republicans pass no fault. When he died, they went right ahead and did it. And that was what happened. And the idea is now that the people are going to be able to only pay for what you need. Right. Okay, that's brilliant. So you say to somebody, you can pay $100 for your medical, or you can pay $1,000 for unlimited. What do you want to pay? I'll pay $100. Of course, it's going to run out in 5 weeks if you're hurt. And then who pays? You're going to pay. Or these people are going to literally be thrown to the wolves.
Well, it makes me wonder. I mean, you look at how much money these auto insurance companies spend on advertising.
Insurance companies.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
All insurance companies. And you know how they make their money, don't you? In the stock market. And they keep claiming that they lose money because you make claims. Not one. You've never seen one insurance company ever open their books and say that there is a relationship between the claims that are made and the amount of premiums we charge, because there is no relationship between them. Other than catastrophic losses, and they're only in property, usually with hurricanes that wipe out whole cities, there is no relationship between claims and lawsuits and the amount of premiums people pay. But people are so stupid they've allowed insurance companies to tell them that there's frivolous lawsuits and you're paying the premiums because lawyers and people are slipping on banana peels and you have to pay ridiculous premiums. Nonsense.
Do they ever go out of business?
I spoke to somebody last week.
No, rarely, except when they do go out of business, and they have recently. They go out of business because they make bad investments, never from claims.
Right.
Never.
I was talking to somebody last week, and for the first time, they do investments for one of the big insurance.
That's all they.
Companies.
That's how they make
And
their
he's-
money.
Yeah, and I didn't realize. He said we don't make money from the premiums. He says we make money from stock and real estate
Of
investments.
course, that's all
With
they
your
do. and
money
they're-
that you're
There
paying
you
for
go.
the premiums.
And do you know how wealthy they are? People have no idea.
Yeah, I
what
had
they
no
own.
idea that was.
You
the case.
didn't?
I just thought they're making money from all these premiums. From people
Nonsense.
not,
In fact, the
No.
premiums are nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing compared to what. And they put nothing aside unless you have a claim. So, Alan, you get a claim, you're hurting a thing. They say, okay, we're going to put aside. They're supposed to. That's what almost brought the insurance companies down in 2008. They were doing this. They were insuring. By law, when claims come in, they're supposed to put away what's called a reserve. The reserve is the amount of money that could possibly have paid on your claim. So that's kind of held in a lockbox, so nobody spends it while they're making money in the stock market. Right. Well, you're supposed to do that. But they decided, well, let's get around that. We don't want to tie up a whole bunch of money in the reserves, which we can't make money in the stock market. And they were making money hands over fist in these thing called swaps. Now, swaps were these phony things where they were actually insuring home loans for all these mortgages. Nobody went to jail. It caused
the financial
Yes,
crisis.
it did.
Yeah.
But they were it's what almost brought AIG down, and government had to pay for it. So they were insuring these loans. They were insuring them against loss, but they were putting nothing aside for it. So when all of the housing bubble broke, and all of these lenders said to AIG and the other people, pay on those insurance those things that you sold us called swaps. And they said, we can't pay. There's too many of them. And it was and it was a total
You're
fraud.
right. It was
and
a total fraud.
And there was a deal with the Obama, and this is one thing I do blame Obama administration for. Not one person ever got prosecuted.
If Obama
and that's why I don't understand also. You better worry about this, the city of Detroit. The only thing that ever happened in the city of Detroit, really, in terms of the rebuilding downtown here, is this Rocket Mortgage. I don't understand. That business, to me, is exactly what I'm talking about. You're selling mortgages to poor people, okay? Mm-hmm. And you're making the difference between what you sell it to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are the government entities that buy the mortgages, and their profit is the difference between what they sell it for and what they've charged the people for. Mm-hmm. I don't know how that business continues. And all those young kids that you see walking around the city of Detroit are just these people who got hired by Dan Gilbert to talk on the phone to sell poor people mortgages. That's ridiculous. That can't keep up. That's a phony business.
If Obama had started on January 21st, 2009 by having a mass guillotining of all of these Wall Street people and twisting their heads onto pikes up and down Wall Street, he'd be on Mount Rushmore by now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, not one person got even charged.
No, that's right. Because they
Not
were
one
afraid that if
person.
they really, that the economy was so fragile that if they let this happen, that
they
the
were
whole
afraid,
house would come down.
Well, because
Tim Geithner was
they were afraid. Well, it's a little worse than that. The people who would be charged still controlled all the money.
Yeah.
So they said, you start going after us, and we'll really make it
All right,
bad.
well, we got to wrap it up pretty soon,
Why
but I
do
got
we
a
have to
couple more
wrap it
things.
up?
Well, you can go
I
as
don't
long
think
as you
we've
want.
talked
If you
very
want.
long at all.
Not at all.
It goes pretty fast. But no, we've the coronavirus. This is getting interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You've
It
got
had
these
to happen.
people quarantined
It
on a
had
cruise
to
ship.
happen.
It had to happen.
It
On a
had to
cruise
happen.
ship?
No,
No,
it had to
there's
happen.
people quarantined on a cruise ship in Japan. They're stuck there.
That would be
They
like
can't
my
leave.
hell.
They
In,
can't.
in China, it's interesting that there is
Yeah.
starting to be on social media. A lot of the Chinese people are so mad because the whistleblower who has died
The
now,
doctor, yeah.
the doctor,
actually warned him about this.
ophthalmologist who has died, and there's a lot of
Kate,
other stuff.
worry
the Kate
more than
Winslet,
that.
the Kate Winslet
The
part
amount
in
that-
Contagion.
I'll
right?
tell you in terms of that's right, the contagion. We were due, the last major pandemic, 1918, we're due for one. And it turns out that this thing is incredibly easy to transmit. And since it apparently now can be transmitted by people who aren't symptomatic, that will turn it into a worldwide pandemic, and it kills people. It kills young people. Look at that. The thing that bothered me most about the ophthalmologist isn't that he was the whistleblower and he caught it and unfortunately he died. He's 34 years old, male. They keep saying, oh, it only happens to really sick people who are already sick. I think they're lying about that. How about that 34-year-old ophthalmologist?
Yeah.
He wasn't sick.
He wasn't sick.
Now,
Right.
so it's much worse than they're saying. It is far. It is extended far beyond the borders of China, and God help us.
Well, President Trump came out
Wash your
yesterday and
hands.
said, hey, it looks like President Xi is handling this really well. They built a hospital in 10 days. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you believing this guy?
He doesn't believe anything. Somebody told him that.
Yeah, well,
look at that.
he
I
said
mean, he
it-
doesn't. What does he know about viruses?
Well, he knows about everything.
He's
Remember?
defunded.
He
He's
knows more
claimed
about
he
everything
cured
than everybody.
cancer, and
He knows
he
more about
defunded.
ISIS than
He
anyone.
defunded
Windows, too.
all the medical research, and he claims he cured cancer. It's frightening.
It is. You're right.
Yes, we'll see what happens with that.
Well, you
I
better
won't be
not.
traveling
I hope,
to Wuhan
I
anytime
hope,
soon.
Forget Wuhan. How is it on boats off the coast of Japan?
Yeah.
They didn't start in Wuhan. Wuhan is the center of China. How do all these Japanese have it on boats off the coast of Japan? How did it get there?
Right.
Well, if it got there, it's going to go everywhere. And by the way, start looking around when they say the maps and the reported cases. See if you see any in Africa. Okay, or South America. You don't see anything. You know it's there, but they don't have any means to test it.
Right,
Go
exactly.
look at the maps when they start showing them on TV and show where the reported cases are. There's 0 in Africa, 0 in South America. Yeah, right. Right. They're there.
I'm going to wash my hands.
That's basically what I'm going to be doing
I think
all
I'm
the
gonna be
time.
doing that.
Story.
I'm gonna go get
No,
a
the
good
mass
corned beef
situation.
sandwich because I'm gonna be. We're gonna die.
That's right.
No, it's scary.
eat.
You just hope the percentage rate is relatively even in the pandemic of the flu, the percentage of people who passed away was only 2%, but is still about
It's
50 million.
It's a 4% rate they're saying right now for the people who are
That's
infected.
twice
Yeah.
as high
Wow.
as
That is.
the pandemic, the swine flu, and that killed 50 million people worldwide.
All right, one last thing because we
Crazy.
do have to exit. But Sunday night is the Oscars. Don't think I've
By
seen
the way,
any
I
of the
bought
films.
an ad on the Oscars.
Did you really?
And I'm not putting Mike Morris's ugly little body in there. You know, the guy's about 2 inches tall. He should. I'll cast him as Pinocchio's. What's the
Jiminy
Jiminy
Cricket.
Cricket?
Jiminy Cricket? Right.
Well, I mean, I don't think I've seen any of the films that are actually nominated this year because I don't go to the movies that often.
It's
And
interesting. The
probably won't watch.
Irishman.
No host.
The
No, they
Irishman.
didn't have one last
I know.
year.
Yeah.
I know.
And they got the biggest
But you've-
ratings ever.
You've got a theatrical streak, obviously. Do you?
I actually have 2 degrees in theater.
I know
have a
you do. I mean,
master's and a
is this the
bachelor's.
kind of thing you pay attention to? You pay attention to the Oscars?
I could care less. You know, them voting for themselves. They could all. You know, they.
Journalists are just as bad.
But
So
no, they're not. Come on, they got the SAG awards, the what awards,
Golden
and it's
Globe.
like there's
Golden Globe.
and they're all voting for themselves. Who cares? What a joke! And which one's better? I mean, realistically, there's probably 5, 6, 7 great movies. Is one better than the other? No, that's utter and complete nonsense too. And the only reason they do it. Money. They sell that show and they make a whole bunch of money for the Screen Actors and the Motion Picture Society.
Wait, I
That's a
did see-
joke.
I did see The Irishman. That is the one
Is it good?
nominee that I've seen. I
It's
liked
long.
it. I liked
I
it.
thought
It's
it's
about 3
good.
hours long.
I think there's better films out there though.
Well, you want to read something about Hoffa? There's a new book out by this guy. He was
Jack
Chucky
Goldsmith.
O'Brien. Yeah, amazing book called
We've written about it.
in Hoffa's Shadow or in the Shadow of Hoffa. And I don't read a lot because I read all day for work and I can't. And I read that book. I couldn't put it down. It was so good.
Yeah.
That was amazing. It just came out.
Well, there you go. There's your literary recommendation for the week on the week that was. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Nancy, Alan, appreciate it, as
Thanks.
always.
Thank
Jeff
you.
Fieger, We'll have you back,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, definitely.
We appreciate
That's
it
what
very
you
much.
think.
We had fun. Fieger time.
That's exactly right. We're going to change the name of the show, but that's all right.
Sit here and listen. That's all. So.
But thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering the broadcast
All right,
today.
Michael.
Thanks to Techtown and Samaritas for sponsoring this broadcast. Appreciate that very much. And thanks to all of you for checking it out, sharing it, all that good stuff. Tell your friends if they're watching. If you like it, share it with them. Let them know that we're doing this each and every Friday here at Deadline Detroit, Deadline TV, and DeadlineDetroit.com. All sorts of great stories there for you every day. And don't forget, we've got a little membership drive going on. Alan, you want to explain what that's about here?
It's $3 for a month, and we give away a lot of prizes. We give away free, like this month, free Red Wing tickets, restaurant gift cards, Starbucks gift
We
cards.
put a guy courtside at the Pistons last month.
He was, and
So-
he was there for the
and-
Kobe tribute, which is
I
a
know.
big deal.
Which
Can you
included
believe
free
that
food?
anybody goes to watch Detroit
Oh, my
sports teams?
God.
Well, it doesn't
Wow.
matter if it's free and you get to sit
If you sit
courtside, man.
courtside and you
It's
get a
not
free meal.
It's not comfortable in those places. They've made them so. Have you sat in those chairs?
Of course I haven't.
They're
Jeez.
horrible.
Oh, you're talking about at the
Well,
at the
I'll tell you,
arena.
These stadiums.
If
Yeah.
you go
they're
further up,
horrible.
it's insane. I mean, I am surprised there's not lawsuits, and maybe there are. But I sat up
You
pretty
mean
high,
where
pretty
the,
the high up.
I was scared to death.
And
That you could
the
fall
incline,
off.
Yeah,
That
you
the
could
incline is
fall
like that,
off.
and there's about that much space to walk.
Well, it was worse,
Well,
by
these-
the way.
these
at
are
the
tall
old
people
Joe
problems.
Louis Arena. In the Joe Louis Arena, I was brought up to one of those.
It's
not an
God.
issue for me.
By my bank, and literally, you could fall off that
Yeah.
thing.
Joe Louis was.
so
I-
Nancy-
That was worse.
Oh, what's
That
my
was-
scarf
Nancy
today?
has to. She's got a
It's a-
request from the Peanut Gallery.
It's an it's an Hermes pleated, and if you message me privately, I will send you a really nice picture of it.
there you go.
I thought you were going to send them one of those scarves.
No, I don't
Yeah.
have that much money.
Right, whoever wants one, Nancy.
everybody here is
Is
making bank.
Hermes, is that what I call Hermes?
Yeah.
The
I think-
correct pronunciation
I don't know.
is
I don't
Hermes?
speak French. I
Neither
thought
do
you
I.
didn't say the S at the end of anything unless there's
No,
an E.
but it's an H, right?
Yeah,
It's
and-
Hermes.
And if
right?
you're if you're a horsewoman, you pronounce and they make saddles, you call it a Hermes. So that's just
Well,
the way.
then we shall say though au revoir because we need to go.
Au revoir. All right.
I'm just
Au revoir,
kidding.
hey.
I don't speak French either.
And-
Thanks everybody, and
And drive home safely.
all right.
From where?
Hey, the Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization doing great stuff all around the state.